Millions of years ago, Zovaal was punished. His essence diminished, his body withered and rendered immobile, left only to his thoughts and burning physical pain. His gambit failed, the Primus binding his soul within the maw. Zovaal, the jailed. Weak of body, all he could do was scheme, gather pieces on the board, make his place, adapt. The altruistic drive that set him against the Maker's plan has long since melted away, and now, twisted by isolation and by pain, Zovaal wants his own back on a universe that he sees as naught but fuel for the Maker's furnace, and kin for whom his love has twisted to hate. That is not the character of Zovaal the Jailer in World of Warcraft. What I just said is not the plot of Shadowlands. It is straight up my own personal fanfic. It is the first thing that entered my head when I saw this, which most certainly is not fanfic. This is a new jailer model, and taken within the context of what we already know, it is interesting. It raises questions about how all of this works, and frankly, a few questions about Blizzard, because I know it's not just me who's looking at this and thinking, that model's kind of interesting. Imagine if that was the jailer. Wouldn't he feel unique? Wouldn't he have a more creepy, deeply terrifying dimension to him, rather than being just another big, muscly man? The voice that we played at the start of the video, that's Black Phillip from The Witch, a movie that I adore. Such menace. Take a character like Silco in Arcane and how he is voiced. What would a direction like that have been for the jailer? Blizz, I know that you feel your big bads have got to be epic. Epic makes us think big, muscles, rock, roll, metal, and I love all that. But in a way, it's pretty limiting. And you've been telling stories like that for a long, long time. And you probably want a lot more creative freedom. I think Shadowlands shows that. Well, I think something like a more creepy, non-generic jailer, I actually think players would accept it. That said, let's talk about this jailer bot and what it means for the story that we do have. This is where I basically say, insert hilarious segue. Here's our Patreon loot for January 2022. Here's the first pin in our 2022 set. It's the Griffin, and oh man, I love what our games, our game team has came up with. They craft the loot being artists. So we got class cards. We've got a freshly revamped art direction as well. So links down below for the Patreon. If you're subbed through January, there'll be a bag of loot going to you. All right, let's get into the video. In the Sepulchre of the First Ones, the new raid, we fight the Prototype Pantheon. Just that it's actually not the full Prototype Pantheon. It's only 4 out of 5 of them. Remember, of course, Zovaal used to be the jailer. So why is his prototype not in the raid? And why does this jailer bot have domination runes inscribed on his flesh? Well, that, everyone, is where it gets messy. The story goes that Zovaal betrayed his kin, was defeated, and then had his sigil stripped from him. Then, whenever Zovaal was imprisoned, and this really is the important bit, the Primus inscribed domination runes on his body. Now, if he acquired those runes in life, then how could a prototype thing of the jailer have those runes? It makes no sense. Now, you may say to me, well, look at the prototype Primus. He has runes. That does kind of make sense. But first, he has those runes because domination magic is his thing. Second, his runes are clearly part of his clothing. And I know that sounds funky for robots, but I guess that's kind of an internal logic. And third, the rest of the Prototype Pantheon don't have what you would call flesh region rune inscriptions. If there's runes, it tends to be on the armor and the adornments. Put all of this together, and I really don't think that this is a prototype of Zovaal. I mean, was Zovaal, the Arbiter of Souls, really designed to look that evil? That would be a pretty darn odd choice, wouldn't it? So now it seems to me to not be a prototype of the jailer. So just what the hell is it then? Most simply, it could just be Zoval's corpse. This is just a data mined model, and it seems like the final chapter of the Covenant campaign is not testable and won't be on the PTR, which is a good thing. Now, combine that with how major lore reveals tend to happen in cinematics, and this husk could be just that. It could be Zoval after we defeat him, a process where we will probably beat him down in a fight for some big, magic-y, first ones, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly quantum thing to happen during the cinematic. Right, dead Zoval. I mean, we know we defeat him. Is that then? Well, it's not just Zoval's corpse. Because look at the model again. His shoulders are different to Zoval. This clearly is a robot. But the Winter Queen also was created in the same fashion as the Arbiter. And if you look at her, she does not have strange shoulders, does she? Don't worry, I've got you this time. It's time for Eternal Creation 101. This is as best as I can piece it together. So, originally, we just thought the Arbiter was a strange robot, and that the Eternals were just a pack of lads, a bunch of beings. We've since found out that they are created beings, artificial in origin. Just like many other World of Warcraft characters that we know and like. Loken, Odin, Tyr, the Titans. None of them are organic. I mean, hell, the dwarves and the gnomes. They are just the organic descendants of robots that were cursed by old gods. So, does a Titan Keeper have a soul? Did Freya have a soul? What's even the nature of the soul of a dwarf when you think about how fleshy dwarves came into existence? These are all big questions, so let's just boil it down and build an Eternal. The Shadowlands has no Arbiter. The original Arbiter, called Zoval, was a total dickhead. The new Arbiter, blue-screened. So enter Pelagos. He decides that he is going to become the Arbiter, and I guess we all just kind of go along with it because he's pretty likable. Now, how does he become the Arbiter? Well, it's a dead simple 2-ingredient recipe, it seems. 1 part robot, 1 part soul. Pelagos offers up his soul. And of course, here we see the robot body. Is it any surprise then that the robot that Pelagos offers his soul to is clearly the same model as the weird data-mined Zoval robot? No, of course not, because I think they are both template Arbiter chassis. Once the process is complete, this is what Pelagos looks like. There you go, Arbiter Pelagos. Note how, you have the initial small robot body and then Pelagos. You put them together and then boom, it's a full Arbiter. Different from both of its constituent parts. Hell, even note that the base Arbiter body has the goldish coloration of the Prototype Pantheon from the boss fight, and that's a similar-ish color to loads of the first one's magic. So seemingly that stuff is all of the same stock. Clearly then, the first ones, their magic is used to sort of fuel and accelerate this process and actually create the Eternal. Now, I want you to imagine if the reverse happened. Imagine if Arbiter Pelagos was defeated, or at the very least, had the inverse of its creation process happen. Well, the full form would wither, and surely what would remain is a Pelagos-tinged basic Arbiter chassis. Now, if this is so, and bear in mind it is just my interpretation and it's speculation, but if it is so, then perhaps it would seem that we're not looking at a prototype of Zoval, but we're actually looking at a defeated and then unmade Zoval. If he's so powerful, then how do we defeat him? He's using the very magics of creation. Surely he'll have to be undone in some way. The whole thing with this character is you can't just lock him up in jail. He'll worm his way out. You have to kill him. So surely something big will happen in that cinematic. Now, as you can no doubt tell, this all means that if I was a betting man, I'm going to say I'm placing my bets on this not being a prototype. I think the runes just cannot be explained. If the runes on the dead Zoval bot thingy were acquired during life, and if these are not runes that are used in the role of the Arbiter, then where did the runes come from? Well, obviously the Primus inscribed the runes on him, then he's like died and unmade, and the remnants of those runes are left on the wee robo corpse. Of course then, there's also that big leak to talk about, isn't there? This leak caused drama back in the day. I'm happy enough to show the leak now because time has passed and it's obviously spread around the internet. So this is concept art of Zoval before he became the jailer. And I believe this was snapped by somebody very, illicitly, they weren't supposed to, during some sort of Blizzard tour. Somewhere where evidently they would have had to have signed an NDA. That's an NDA that they obviously breached. Now, if you look at this jailer, do you see any flesh runes on him? You don't. Now, I would say, isn't it curious that this concept art has never really made it into the game? Obviously, cut story ideas are part of the whole process. Maybe they just did this concept art to work out who this character was, but they found they didn't need to build an original version of Zoval for the game. Sometimes, details form during the production of a game, so I'm not saying this is cut content or anything, but I've got to wonder if they concepted this version of Zoval because at one point they maybe intended to have original-looking Zoval be in the game. I mean, think about the Primus. Back when we knew the Primus as the rune carver, well, he'd clearly withered away, hadn't he? Once we restored his sigil to him, he actually changed form back into the Primus. You would kind of assume that Zoval's, deep voice, angry nips, out, big, muscly, meathead man appearance was kind of down to him losing his sigil and his form withering from the concept art that you can see to the Zoval that we see in-game. Why then did Zoval not return to his original form when he got his sigil back? Like, all that happened is he got some new armor. I would say either there was a plot line about his past that didn't make it in, or this is far more part of his character, but it just hasn't been communicated much in-game overtly. The idea that he has his full power back, he could return to his true self, but rather than revert to that, he has now chosen to double down on the path that he has taken. That works pretty well for the plot, but it does make me wonder why the other Covenant leaders didn't experience big issues, at least from a visual standpoint, whenever their sigils were removed from them. Perhaps this actually has nothing to do with the sigils being removed, and it is just a restoring of the Primus's form, undoing some jailery magic that turned him into the rune carver and all the stuff about his memories. You know what? If only these characters just had some more screen time, eh? Okay, so TLDR here, if you're wondering about the Jailer bot situation. In my opinion, my TLDR is that the Jailer bot looks way more cool than the Jailer, and I think with the right voicing and the right writing, he could be a non-traditional, really unique, really cool World of Warcraft villain, where it would make a lot of narrative sense that he's always been having to play these big, long time span games and sort of making all of these bets, because that's kind of the only thing that he could do. That's technically true for the current Zoval because he was locked away in the Maw, but I think it would be cooler if that was doubled down on and, well, yeah, Zoval was this creepy robot. But, of course, we've now rambled on a little bit about First One's creation magics, and I think what we've basically worked out is how these Eternal Ones are actually made. I think we now understand some of the process there, and perhaps this gives us some sort of clue to how Zoval is going to end up and what could actually happen in that final cinematic. Because what is this robot? It can't be a prototype jailer. How did it get the sigils on its chest? It has to be something new, right? So there you go. I think that's what's going on with the jailer. I would love to know, though, what do you think's going on with the jailer? And do you think that creepy non-Chad jailer could in fact be a more interesting villain? Do let me know. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you next time.